Columbia, Missouri. No. 2 Alabama leads Missouri, 28-3, after 2 quarters of play at Faurot Field. The Crimson Tide held the ball for 15:49 and ran 5 plays more than the hosting Tigers, 40-35, in the team's first game of a 10-game, conference-only football season. Alabama outgained Missouri, 315-113, and running back Najee Harris and wide receiver Jalen Waddle accounted for all 4 touchdowns with 2 scores apiece. Harris rushed for 71 yards in the pair of touchdowns on 13 carries, 5.5 yards per carry. Waddle recorded a career-high 7 receptions and turned them into 121 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. In the 5th start of his Crimson Tide career, quarterback Mac Jones threw for 239 yards and the 2 scores to Waddle while completing 17 of his 23 passes in the first 30 minutes of play. Defensively, 4 players were tied for the team lead in tackles in linebacker Christian Harris and defensive backs Jordan Battle, Josh Jobe and Daniel Wright. Harris registered the first sack of the season, while Jobe forced a first-half fumble. UA posted 5 tackles for loss. Other halftime notes: Alabama's captains for tonight's game with Missouri were offensive lineman Landon Dickerson, linebacker Dylan Moses and wide receiver Devonta Smith. The Crimson Tide had 7 student-athletes make their first career start versus Missouri, including 2 on offense, 3 on defense and 2 specialists. Getting the nod on offense were Emil Ekiyor Jr. and Carl Tucker. The first-time starters on defense included Will Anderson Jr., Malachi Moore and Daniel Wright. Rounding out the group on special teams were placekicker Chase Allen and punter Sam Johnson. Alabama had 10 players make their first career appearance for the Crimson Tide in the first half of tonight's game. The group includes freshmen Chase Allen, Will Anderson Jr., Sam Johnson, Jace McClellan, Malachi Moore, Drew Sanders, Trey Sanders and Roydell Williams along with seniors Joshua Lanier and Carl Tucker. Under head coach Nick Saban, Alabama is 139-8.946 when leading at the half. The Crimson Tide has held the lead in 57 of its last 73 games dating back to the start of the 2015 season. UA is also 123-4.969, when leading by 7 or more points at the break during the Saban era. Alabama's defense recorded 5.0 tackles for loss in the first half of tonight's game. The Crimson Tide's high for tackles for loss in a full game last season was 7.0, which occurred 7 times, most recently against Western Carolina on November 23. Alabama extended its school record for consecutive games with a score to 256 thanks to Najee Harris's 1-yard rush to get UA on the board. The Crimson Tide was last held off the scoreboard in a 9-0 loss to Auburn on November 18, 2000. Najee Harris totaled 71 yards rushing in the first half of tonight's game. With his 71 yards, Harris has totaled 2,448 rushing yards for his career to move into 14th place all-time on Alabama's career rushing yards list.